time to try to actually pull some ability into Bitcoin for programmability until the Taproot revolution went live right around 2021. And then it took a little while for people to figure out a development model for it. And then we started seeing this concept of BitVMs, Bitcoin virtual machines.
Right.
And the first generation was kind of a toy, but now we're in BitVM 2, BitVMX, and now we're starting to get to a point where Bitcoin has a brain, so it actually can talk to other systems. You can actually program enough to have interoperability.
Which is huge.
Massive.
And you say a lot of people didn't have the courage. Why was that? Because it's such a monumental undertaking, or because the Bitcoin system is so unique and the people within it? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, one part philosophical. Once you have achieved the original goals of the project, then what you don't want to do is start going off in mission creep direction. So if your goal is create digital gold and a decentralized store of value, the minute you add programmability, you exponentially increase you're able to present that experience. You're kind of dead in the water philosophically, culturally, and technologically. And it's only been recently where Bitcoin DeFi has evolved to that point where we now can actually entertain those three rules.
Yeah, and it feels just so incredible that Bitcoin has sort of gone from just this store of value, like you said, the digital gold, to now we have this whole ecosystem opening up through such a monumental thing as bringing DeFi to Bitcoin that we never would have thought possible before. So you guys did a presentation on that earlier. You walked us through how that's going to be possible, Cardano's involvement in all of this. And I would love to hear from you how that went, what you're doing, and just how big of an opportunity this is.
Yeah, it's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. Actually, it's 4 times larger than the market cap of Solana and Ethereum combined. So it just gives people a sense of how gargantuan it will be. And Bitcoin at this juncture, especially with the bull market coming, has almost unlimited liquidity. So it's the ecosystem that really needs this. And what we do is we look at it like concluded, but certainly a lot of great progress has been made. And some of the things have already been running on Bitcoin mainnet. So we had demonstrated transaction between Bitcoin mainnet and Cardano mainnet, where an ordinal was able to move back and forth, which is a huge leap forward. It really proves not only the concept, but it proves it at scale.
That is huge. And I'm listening to a couple of things here. The toggle, that to me reminds me of sort of the Steve Jobsian moment of making things easy, like the click of the button and you're in. And that's what it kind of like impacted me when you said that, because that's how we're going to make it easy to the masses and how we're going to make it seamless and accessible. And the way that you described Cardano being the closest to Bitcoin, I think a lot of people don't actually know that. And so what is it about it that's so similar to Bitcoin?
Well, what we did is we just took a lot of the really, really good ideas that came from the Bitcoin space and we just extended and improved them. So if you like a decentralized ecosystem with no central point of failure, then Cardano is for you. And so there's a great overlap between these two ecosystems. And ADA is the deflationary asset, just like Bitcoin is a deflationary asset. So it's very similar. It's a slightly different emission schedule, but inflation is monotonically decreasing. So once Bitcoiners start seeing all of that, they say, okay, the principles align, the technology aligns, and it does in many ways feel like a spiritual successor or continuation of what they're looking for. But what's nice is that Bitcoin and Cardano kind of make each other better. Bitcoin is a very secure audit layer. It's a giant value store, a lot of liquidity. Cardano is an amazing computation layer. And so when you pull these two pieces together and you have a little toggle to be able to go back and forth, we can allow a seamless experience. The other thing is Cardano has a built-in feature called Babel fees. And what this is always secured by Bitcoin, there's a path to do that. If you want to live in a world where it's a little faster and cheaper and you have still very good security, but it's not completely secured by Bitcoin, there's a way to do that as well. But you don't pick that for the user. You let them decide. And that's really the cool part about that layer too. If you design that UX layer the right way, then it's just basically not only a toggle, but an advanced setting. And you should either pick the default setting or you can pick your own customization of it. And once you start looking at it that way, then maximalists fall into a configuration setting as opposed to a philosophy. They just basically pick the most draconian and expensive way. But then other people will say, actually, I like the other way. I think that's a better way of going about it. But the other paradigm is that it's a silly thing to say that gold is only valuable if it sticks around the gold mine. The Bitcoin network is a gold mine. It's the most expensive and successful gold mine, I think, of all time.
Bitcoin DeFi as it is. So how far away are we kind of from making this a reality and an everyday occurrence?
Well, it's more of an iterative approach. And so it already works on mainnet. It's just how do you make it better, faster, cheaper, and how do we continue to be relentless about the user experience? So on our side, layer 2, So the wallet layer of it, we already have Bitcoin support and integration for the Lace wallet, which is desktop right now, and it's coming mobile soon. And that toggle switch will come the second half of the year. And that's the beginning of the conversation. There's a lot of infrastructure improvements that have to be made to get it into an appropriate latency and cost window. And that's what we're working on with Fairgate and the BitVMX platform. And I think that iterative improvement will be very fast now that there's probably more than a dozen people working full time on that. And the big thing is, well, we'd like it to have something you can do when you click that toggle switch. So you have to build an ecosystem. So we've already begun workshops. Only Bitcoin is at the scale where such a thing could be constructed and transacted with the equivalent volume of Tether or Circle.
That's a huge concept, and I was going to ask you, what keeps you up at night? Like, what are you thinking about now? And man, this is really important that people start to think about this. Many people don't; they just transact without really understanding what's happening. It's the same old tired system with better technology, right? And so, do we want to go back into that world, or are we fighting for something different?
Yeah.
So, what are we fighting for essentially? What's on the other side of that?
Yeah, there has to be a reconciliation where you go from DeFi and TradFi to just Fi. And it's very much the same when the internet came out. It started killing all the papers. A lot of papers resisted it, but the ones that embraced it, they survived and thrived, and they became new media. And the same thing has to happen here. I would just hope that we don't abandon the principles upon which the industry was founded. And so that's one of the reasons I created Cardano, is I wanted to have a safe harbor for all these things. In some cases, it's made us a little bit of an island, but we try as hard as we can, not because they've gotten away for a long time being this financial capital, and then taking advantage of that and being quite egregious on many, many, many things.
And now losing that control.
And losing that control scares the hell out of them, because they say, well, wait a minute here. If all things are equal, wouldn't people live where there's a beautiful mountain view and low crime and traffic's not so bad and you can actually park your car, these types of things? I used to live in New York. I was in Jamaica, Queens. And so it's not personal. It's just I hold cities accountable for the things they do, both good and bad. And it's very clear when a city or a community really wants to change and bring people in. Like when Dubai said and Abu Dhabi said, we want cryptocurrency businesses. This was not a vacuous thing.
Right.
They went ahead and they opened arms and had VARA and the ADGM, and they invited all of us to go and talk about regulation and policy, trade with everybody and don't blow people up. I want sound money. So your money should be worth something. And I want to follow the Constitution. Just choose liberty. And we had an equal amount of Democrats as we did Republicans. And there was a lot of young people that were very fatigued with the political system. And I kept that to heart and I internalized that. And so I said, you know what, if I ever do a business or I ever do a protocol, everything I do has to in some way incentivize that. So if people trade with each other, they tend not to kill each other. So if you have protocols and start unifying people, then what ends up happening is that wars go away. And we're starting to see that with Israel trading with people in the Middle East. Until the recent events, the Abraham Accords were actually creating a political reality that I never thought I'd see in my life. I was in Dubai and saw Sheikh Mohammed walk by at the World Governance Forum, and he walked by an Israeli flag in Dubai. I mean, he saved up all this money, and now what he saved is worth half as much as when he retired because of inflation.
Wow.
It's theft on a global scale, the modern Ponzonomics of the fiat monetary system. And they say, well, that's the good for society because it increases the velocity of money, this Keynesian garbage. And it's really at the end of the hood saying this gives politicians an excuse not to raise taxes and to spend as much as they want. So instead of doing the right thing and having a balanced budget, what they do is they rob us silently and in a politically convenient way with inflation.
Right.
So not having sound money means that all things being equal, you get poorer every year. And lo and behold, we all wonder why things are getting so bad. When I was a kid, remember The Simpsons?
Oh, yeah.
It came out in 1988. And this is a story, as Secretary of Defense, Treasury. It's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, it's like kind of have to run the country, right? But crypto will come in December, January. So we were kind of waiting to have that conversation to see what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. And they went in a strange direction where they picked a czar and they merged it with AI. And I think that was an Elon Musk decision back when he had as much influence as he did.
Right.
And then said, well, what do you want to do with this? They said, well, there's going to be like an advisor group. That's why they picked Bo Hines. And originally, it was supposed to be like the chairman or executive director of a group of advisors that come in. So for a while, we were trying to engage and figure that out. And then they decided to get rid of the advisor group and just have, working groups. So eventually he said, what we're going to do is we're just going to go talk to Trump. And so ironically, a mutual friend of ours, it was Cordell, Snoop Dogg. So look at French Hill in the House, and he's the counterpart there. And there's a lot of discipline in how to be reasonable and measured in the legislative process. Because the crypto people, they're coming in, they're saying like, we want yield-bearing stable coins and a reserve with all this stuff, and we want this thing and this thing and this thing. And then politics in Washington, they're like, okay, dude.
Chill.
We're lucky if we can agree like on what dog to get. It's like do you like a Labrador? No, hell no. I like German Shepherds. You're a monster. So the reality of expectations versus the reality of what the House and Senate can deliver in a legislative package, and how not to create something that becomes quite problematic. I think they've been very measured with that. So what the White House has been very good at doing has been interfacing with the cryptocurrency space and bringing a lot of voice to ultimately probably eat every economic, political, and social system. That's not small. That's gargantuan. And it's not even easy to figure out which regulator should regulate it,
right?
Much less the SEC or the CFTC or something like that. So the fact that they're able to have a legitimate conversation about stable coins and market structure and these things, it's quite impressive, and it's a quite good leadership.
Yeah, and it's the changing of an entire world order.
Yeah,
all just mashed into one. And it kind of reminds me of when, so you talk about bipartisan, when the Clinton administration kind of like let the internet rip.
Yeah.
Is that similar to what we're seeing now? And they say, like weak leaders, they try to control people, and stronger leaders, they set people free. And, they don't overregulate. They don't try to get out ahead of it. They kind of just let it
run a government, and you can't run a society where your entire notion of truth is based upon whether the person you like is president or not. You just can't, because we have to move forward. We have to make laws. We have to enforce things. So what blockchain does is it starts taking a lot of these things out of human control, and it moves them into more algorithmic governance. So you say, well, you might not like the president, but you'll agree that he was legitimately elected, and because the voting system was blockchain based. Or you might not like the banking system, but you'll agree that you're not going to be preyed upon by the banking system.
Some undeniable truths.
Yeah, it's an objective reality. Mm-hmm. And the example I like to give to people is how powerful trust is in society, and its absence, how damaging it can be.
Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and enabling post notifications for more content on crypto and digital assets. Check out our other videos and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps with the YouTube algorithm and keeps the content coming. Thanks for your support. Enjoy the video.